everybody. Welcome to this commercial real estate news morning show, and I have my esteemed guests, Deanie Taylor and Paul Sheedy, in the house. Welcome, boys. Thank you for joining today, and we're going to talk all sorts of things around everything. So this show is all about discussing the latest news in commercial real estate. We usually, talk a wide variety of topics about all sorts of things. And usually Paul Sheedy's trying to run for prime minister, but we got to get him elected. We got to get him elected soon. Oh, we got someone else joining us. David's going to be here soon. Yay, David is joining us too. So hold on. Let me see if I can do this. Oh, wait. I removed you, David. On accident. And we have David Hour back in the house. So this is going to be great. All right. So before we get the show started, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Tell everybody how cool you are and why I got you on the show. And Deanie, you can go first.
Well, that's great. Deanie Taylor. I head up strategic relationships for HealthPeak Public REIT that owns outpatient medical, life science, and glad to be on here. Like to talk about healthcare stuff.
Yes, you do. It's awesome. Hey, Paul, go ahead. Prime Minister Sheedy.
President, come on, me and Miss Harris.
Oh,
right,
yes, exactly. Tim Wall.
There you go, being politically correct. So I'm Paul Sheedy. I'm a founder of Unified. We focus on mainly on occupancy technology and how then that delivers lots more prop tech solutions to deliver safer, more efficient buildings, and I'm all into collaborations and globalization.
Awesome. Very cool. Hey, David, how are you?
Good, thanks. Dave Auerbach, Chief Investment Officer, Hoya Capital. We manage 2 REIT and real estate ETFs, RIET and HOMZ, have a combined 130 million plus under management. I'm also the publisher of the daily REIT Beat newsletter, and I'm a REIT industry personality and consultant.
Very cool. He is, and he graces us with his presence on the show. So it is awesome sauce. Very, very cool. All right, let's get started. Since we only got an hour, let's get into it. Obviously, there's a lot of talk lately because the Fed is meeting next week. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it. The rumor mill is everybody baked in like a 25 basis points cut. Like the salary was kind of like the sentiment that was happening. But now that the jobs numbers just came out and they were softer, which is I think was what everybody was hoping. I think everybody's crossing their fingers for a more of a rate cut. Is anybody hearing anything different? What's happening out there? No crystal balls. Can we take bets? We'll take bets on that.
I mean, general consensus is 25 basis points. I think most people are, forecasting. I don't think we're seeing 100 basis points between now and the end of the year. There's been some folks that say we could see over 100 bips, but I think, and Richard Fisher, who is the former president of the Dallas Fed, was on CNBC this morning and said if he was sitting in the room, he'd be pushing for 25. And since he's still very, let's say, influential, I would say that means that I would think the majority of the governors are basically planning on 25 next week.
Yeah. So not 50, right? I mean, if I would. I mean, I think that's what everybody.
Unless something comes in dramatically wonky on tomorrow's CPI and Thursday's PPI reports, I would say 25 is already baked into this market.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So how does real estate react then? If it's 25, then it's going to be okay. I mean, I think pricing already reflects that. I don't think that there would be any major bump, but I think everybody's just kind of holding their breath for when the rates do come down, that they can all kind of pounce on opportunities that are out there, right?
I've been saying for a couple of years now, if not more, like a broken record, the Fed makes that announcement at 2:00. They're cutting 25 basis points. At 2:00 and 1 second, since I focus on REITs, the REITs are going to rally because the 10-year treasury is going to sell off. At 2:00 and 2 seconds, the advisor is going to call their clients and say, hey, the Fed cut interest rates. It's time to buy REITs. and that ship has already sailed, because basically if you look at performance of the REITs over the past, let's say, quarter or so, they've priced in this 25 basis point cut. So I don't think we're going to see, personally, anything dramatic. It might be a short little pop just because it's official, it's in print, it's happening, it's the soft landing is is alive and well. But I think that, we are going to see an initial pop, and then things are going to settle down a little bit. And then all the chatter is going to turn to October. Do we get another 25 basis points? Do they go 50? Now it's just, next week's Fed meeting is the most important Fed meeting until the October Fed meeting. Let's put it that way.
Right. Have we seen pricing adjust at all? I mean, it was so stubborn. The prices, some prices I see where you see some stories where people are picking up deals at 70% off, and the San Diego office tower, Symphony Tower, traded at 70% off, right? But most of the stuff, the pricing has been kind of holding steady. Like nobody's really kind of adjusted based off of the interest rates we're at. Is that what everybody else is seeing, or am I crazy?
I think you're going to see a lot more what has been hidden distressed assets falling. I also had some interesting conversation there just the other day about a European conglomerate who are going into what are old offices and turn them into student accommodation and doing very, very well out of that. So I think it's all about repurposing now. I think we're going to, as I said many weeks ago, the interest rates are not going to fall off a cliff anytime soon. We're in a long, slow adjustment, and I think it's needed to wake everybody up that actually got to start taking this seriously, and it's not all about getting rich quick. I think probably been get rich quick for too long. I think people need to start actually building some solidity in the market now. So, but there's always opportunities. I mean, what I also have seen this week is a lot of uncertainty about the amount of lab space that's been built, and now it's being tried to repurpose again for offices or wherever else. So, I think people are going to get creative. I think that's where we're going to see the next period, is people being creative in what they have, how to repurpose it and make it into a profitable business again. It's a triple. I mean, we've got a much bigger triple whammy than even the US. Our energy rates prices are absolutely 300-400% what we're paying in 2020. So, the hits here are even more severe, I'd say. But we'll see what happens.
Interesting.
Outpatient medical hadn't changed. It's going to take more than 25 basis points to move the needle.
Completely.
Yeah, that's of course, right? Because y'all are super resilient. We thought multifamily resilient, but no, outpatient medical, that's a pretty resilient group. That leads me to another story, Deanie. There's one out in Globe Street. It came out like a week or so ago, talking about how LA's medical office vacancy rate is low. It's like is returned to pre-pandemic levels. Like it's like 9% or something is their vacancy rate in medical office. Do y'all own in California out that way?
We do own some.
Yeah. And is that kind of spread throughout California, or is it just
we've not seen a real drop we've not seen the drop in vacant occupancy. So, and part of that's the asset type we own around outpatient medical, but vacancy's been strong. I mean, occupancy's been strong.
Yeah. Is there a concern around, because of the changing population and baby boomers are always there, and those are probably your bread and butter, doctor avatar customer. But as the population shifts and it's the next largest generation is millennials and Gen Z, and they're like that becomes more prevalent. I guess it doesn't matter if people get sick, but maybe it's a misnomer. Maybe I think baby boomers just like to be in doctor's offices more than other people. But is there a concern that as a baby generation is no longer with us, that there'll be a drop in visits?
Well, I mean, we're all benefiting right now from the aging population, and that's helping keep the visit numbers up. They do make the vast majority of those, but the demand for medical services is still there, and it's too early to say that the 20 to 30-year-olds are going to make a difference in visits and that type thing. There's such a demand by the over 65 that it's going to be a while. And as people live longer, it even adds to it.
Yeah. And what about the
They
aging?
don't live longer, they take longer to die.
Exactly.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
it's another
all
way
good
to
for
say
you,
it.
Dean.
Yes,
exactly.
it's another way to say it.
Well, okay, all right. Well, I'm gonna live. FYI, I'm living till I die. Like I'll be racing
Right.
cars when I'm 120. No, just kidding. But what about the? Is there another concern? Just interesting because trends nationally, like how we're having less babies in the U.S. And so in that population, is that a concern amongst the medical office folk? Are they thinking about it or no?
No, it is. We in some markets it kind of supports, and I think it's a little bit artificial at this point, supports hospitals or providers not providing OB services anymore if they see a real drop. But I don't think that's any particular market you can say, oh, you don't need those services anymore because the rate has dropped. I think we're going to have to wait another 20 to 30 years to really see the volume drop that far to make a difference in the amount of services being provided related to OB.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more cures, more and more treatments. It's more and more people will be living longer, taking longer to die. It's all good for Dini.
Yeah. It may have more impact on pediatric care as there's less and less of the children, and if they're healthier, some markets may see a drop in pediatric visits.
Interesting. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. Well, next topic. That's very cool. I saw an article in talking about necessity retail REIT. Do you follow this one, David? Talking about global net lease. They successfully executed their disposition strategy 1 year post merger. Have you seen that article? He's on mute. You're on mute, David. There you go.
Yeah, it's been around. They merged with Global Net Lease last year. G&L pushed back because a lot of the investors did not want them to have a retail focus. Now they have this retail focus. The CEO was interviewed in Globe Street last week. I think that's the article you're referencing. Yeah. And it's kind of gone by the wayside since they've done a management turnover. Or somewhat of a management turnover. It's operating under this one company umbrella right now. It's still going through a lot of struggles. I mean, it's very debt heavy, this particular entity. So it's I wouldn't say it's a going concern necessarily, but there's a lot of moving parts with this story.
Yeah, it seems interesting. Mergers. If I have to tell you a story, like I'm old, so way back in the day, I was doing M&A, and those were never fun. Like I was at IBM doing mergers and acquisitions, and those are like bears sometimes to get through all of that, to get everybody to come together to sing Kumbaya. So that's kind of an interesting story. Anything else in REIT land that's happening, David? That's major.
I did a post this morning talking about a new REIT that filed an IPO yesterday, based here in Dallas, actually, called Front View. Mm-hmm. And I'm pulling back up the article because I've gone on to 17 other things since then. Front View, they do net lease out parcel properties. 278 properties, 31 states, 2.1 million square feet, focusing on restaurants, self-stores, financial institutions, automotive stores, and medical providers. $100 million deal. So, after the Lineage IPO a couple of months ago, which was the biggest REIT overnight, this one is a very tiny deal by comparison. But again, it just shows that the banks are open, deal making is happening. It's encouraging to see another REIT potentially come into market here. So something to follow. And then one more story that broke this morning, Hudson Pacific Properties, big West Coast based REIT also has a JV with Blackstone on film studios and recording space or movie production space. They cut their dividend. They suspended their dividend this morning. They're paying their preferred, but they suspended the dividend, which sucks. So take the good, you take the bad.
Yeah, for sure. Welcome, CJ. How are you? Welcome to the show, man.
Good.
Yeah.
I was just going to follow on what David said. Once upon a time, I built studios all around North America, but not for investment, for use as we were a film production company. And I can tell you that I use the old adage that if you want to make a small fortune in film production infrastructure, start with a really, really big one, and it'll become small quite quickly.
Really? Okay.
There's only one company that's even barely turning a profit. It's Hackman, and that's only because their scale is so enormous that, and they're also getting 30% subsidies in about 30% of their markets: Atlanta, Austin, Toronto, New York.
With the states because they bring jobs or whatever. Yeah. The film commissions.
So overnight, if those go away, the business is an overnight. It's an existential threat happening. If those subsidies go away, there is no business. Zero.
Wow, interesting.
It goes to zero. Wow. So yeah. And by the way, I did the economic impact statement to create the New York subsidies back in '96 when I was working in the film industry. I actually modeled it on the Toronto. I did on the Toronto subsidy, which was an economic impact statement given to me by their mayor. We did the same thing in New York and handed it to the administration.
Well,
so I know the business pretty well, and I am quite sanguine on it.
Very cool. Well, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
I don't know anybody, so I can't introduce them. Hi, CJ Fellini. We sponsor non-traded REITs. We have two. And they're for accredited and non-accredited investors, all 506C and Regulation D, Regulation A exempt offerings. We logistics experts. So our REITs are any infrastructure that supports the delivery of a service or good direct to consumer, so last mile only. One of the interesting things about that is we work and compete with Lineage all the time. Cold storage is the best idea in real estate today. I am quite definitive about that, but I'll hear any debate. I love cold storage. And you said out parcel. I think David was talking about a company that focuses on art parcel. The next thing in cold storage you're going to see is out parcels being transformed into cold storage, smaller, closer, colder warehouses to support grocery anchored centers. So if there's a Ralph's or a Kroger's and there's a 25% vacancy, they're going to turn that 25% into a support for that anchor of grocery or food or any food delivery. In order to have more floor space for them, they're going to take their back of the house and rent that out parcel as cold storage. That's happening already. I've seen 5 of those redevelopment deals and opportunities in the last 3 weeks alone. So it happened literally overnight.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, the next thanks for coming on the show. I'm so glad you popped in because the next story I wanted to talk about was insurance. It's the lovely story nobody wants to talk about right now. But there's a thing out in Globe Street talking about the property insurers are retreating from industrial multifamily amid widespread softening. So obviously we have to have insurance. How does this play into look, I know in multifamily insurance was killing us. I mean, I've been an LP and GP in multifamily for a long time. And the last 3 years, the prices kept doubling, and it almost killed some deals. Like we couldn't even get through due diligence because the insurance quotes were crazy town. So what's happening in industrial?
Sorry to bogart this conversation. I just came in here. It's like I literally lost my house. I live on the water. I live on a coastal property. I lost my house insurance 3 years. I had a carrier, major carrier, and they used the day after that, the anniversary of that 3rd year, they sent me a letter saying we're not doing it anymore. We're not doing
Mm.
coastal properties. I've been my personal insurance tripled, and
Yeah.
that's if I can get it. So I think this is even a larger issue that is transformative, not just for investment real estate or multifamily, but across the board. Frankly, one that I think is really underprinted, underexplored in print. I can't believe there's not more discussion about this, frankly. I was going to say about the commercial, we are an industrial. We're not having a problem. It depends on where you are. I think there's a little bit more to what you said, Amy. I don't think it's across the board. You're in Miami, you're going to have a big problem. You're in Charlotte, maybe, probably. You're in New York, maybe. You're in Columbus, Ohio. Nah, you're not having a problem whatsoever.
Interesting. Okay, so it's regionally based. Okay, yeah.
I
I mean,
that again, Amy, feeds into what you're doing here, PropTech Council.
yeah.
I've been harping on about this for years now, absolutely years. I spent a day in Shenzhen with the biggest insurance company in the world called Ping An. I just was blown away by how they were using data back then for, in fact, Dini Medical. They have hundreds of millions of policyholders. They were taking every piece of data, and they said to us, even data we know is not going to make a difference from the blood type you have. I mean, they're working out. Back in 2018, they had 100 people in AI, which God knows what it is now. But they were looking at how do I then regionalize when I can see there's clusters of certain cancers or clusters of certain things. How do I then put specialty hospitals in these areas that just focus on that? And their whole focus, they said to us, we don't understand how the West insures, because we do exactly the opposite and we get massive loyalty. Our whole philosophy is we do not lose a customer. So their customer service was beyond words. Your car insurance, if you have a car insurance claim in a city, you get paid out in 30 minutes, urban areas 60. And when you listen to how to do it, you go, Jesus, that's so common sense. Now, what they were also looking at on health insurance, let's look at everything and let's work out how we cure you faster and more efficiently than anybody else. And therefore retain you, and you go off and you tell your friends what great service you had. On insurance for buildings, where I've been harping on now for quite a while, I gave a very robust speech about a year and a half ago in the City of London. And I called them out and I said, look, you guys are not moving. You've got to start looking at having the data on a building. So our view is you censor up your buildings and you feed all that data into insurance companies. So they have literally like a life support machine. They have all the data you need to know exactly every variable in your building. And therefore, they will know as fast as you'd possibly know when anything's gone wrong. And that's how you lower your insurance premiums down and you make your building smarter. And then the whole equation works. Your asset value goes up. Insurance goes down, and your tenants are happy because they know they're in a good building that's actually been done correctly.
Paul, that's interesting. I spoke to an Internet of Things expert, and he said that he's been consulting for insurance companies for 2 years pretty heavily when he didn't have those customers previously. And he says it is his opinion, they didn't tell him this, it is his opinion that they're going to require smart systems that feed that data from the buildings back to the insurer or their data collection vendor on a real-time basis. And if you don't, you're either going to get a higher premium or you're not going to be insured at all. I know what you said originally though about Pyongyang. I don't know about anyone else, but that freaks me out personally. I mean, that much data about the individuals. I think that is a consequence of scale. You know, how many insurers are and how sliced up is the market in China? Not very. This country and in most Western countries, there's a large competitive landscape, which is consolidating. Meaning, I think you're going to have more Pyongyang-like situations here in America because there are fewer insurers, and they're going to demand a lot more. Not just money, premium, but also the data flow. They're going to have that leverage. Even in a competitive environment. Yeah.
It will. And look, we've had huge issues here. We've had massive issues here. So I don't know if you're aware, but last week we had the Grenfell report finally got issued. 7 years, 2 months, and 3 weeks after the fire, to be precise, where 72 people died, completely unnecessary. Everybody was to blame. And I mean everybody. The building sector, the construction sector was literally hammered. And they just showed how no one actually gave a damn. You know, every layer was just, well, I'm finished my job. Up to you. There was no handover. There's nothing, no consistency in anything. And so was the fire service. The fire service made all the wrong calls in the night. They made some very, very bad calls. But the cladding was wrong. The whole way the fire system was put together, nothing worked. But then literally 3 weeks ago, a week before the report got shown out, got released, we had a fire exactly the same as Grenfell again, where the cladding, the entire building went up on fire. Again, 7 years later, the fire alarm still didn't work in the building. This time was worse. They had padlocks on the fire doors. And I sort of sit here going, how in 2024 is this BS still being allowed to happen? And that's one of my main push points is evacuation and fire safety. And if it means me going to my grave, pulling these insurers with me, that's so be it. Because I'm not going to tolerate it any longer. The issue with the fire 3 weeks ago is because nobody died, and that was total luck. I mean, complete luck. No one's going to go to jail over that. If a few people died, now you have an inquiry and people go to jail. But we got to change the narrative here. And I think one of the good things, I mean, the sad thing about a lot of these disasters is that the sector has to wake up. And in the same way we've had our downfall in 2008 and we've got these issues now. This is when we also are rethinking it really and getting a bit of clarity on where do we go long term? How do we develop a building and how do we think about the building changing? I think we've always sort of built buildings to last for the lifetime of what that's going to do. Now we've got to thinking, if the market changes, if I had to change it from an office block to a student accommodation or co-working, or if I had to change it to a residential, how am I designing that building from fundamentally so that if the market changes in the future, I can repurpose and bring it in environmentally as well. So I think it's good. These tough times are when we rethink and we get some focus on where we got to go from going forward. So it's never a bad thing to get off the speed lane and have a rethink again.
Yeah. Resets are never bad. Sometimes it forces you to take a look at your operation and how you're doing things. My company per se, I'm loving it, right? Because I'm all about optimizing real estate operations. So yay me. That's why I get so much people looking at me. Okay, very cool. So I'm going to jump topics a little bit, and I want to go over to, and I love when CEOs of large companies come out and try to, predict the market, because it gives me so much fodder and such great conversation. So Scott, I'm not going to butcher this name. Is it Reckler or Retchler? The RXR CEO? He was on Bloomberg the other day.
Scott Reckler, Rexon.
Yeah, and so he was
RXR is different. Yeah, you meant Rexon or Scott Reckler, right? Or you mean RXR?
Yeah, Reckler. Yeah, okay. He's at RXR. So he's talking about how we're gonna basically we're gonna have permanently higher rates. Like, we just need to get over ourselves. And we started this conversation talking about the Fed. Now we're going back to the Fed because it's happening next week. So as we prepare for this and the world shifts and the valuations change, I'm wondering how. I mean, obviously Deanie's in a very resilient environment, but you also have life sciences labs and any like emerging technology like data centers or life sciences or anything like that. How does this impact that area? I'm curious.
All the amateurs leave the space.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean,
it becomes those who have fundraising capability win. Cash is king again. I mean, real cash, not debt cash.
Not the leverage, over leverage.
Not leverage, right? I mean, yeah. Equity. Yeah. Equity is king again. That's a more apt.
I mean,
yeah. Go ahead, Darren.
He's in a very unique position compared to a lot of other publicly traded REITs. If you look at kind of how RXR was formed post Rexon sell to SL Green and what he chose to focus on, unfortunately he's kind of experiencing the other side of the coin. But again, remember I said you take the good, you take the bad, and he's been somebody that's unfortunately been experiencing a lot of the bad over the past couple of years, especially post-COVID, because a lot of the assets that he acquired are underwater. He's had to refinance, turn the keys back to the lenders on a bunch of properties. he's obviously deeply connected, but it's the kind of situation that a lot of the REITs have frankly already cherry picked some of his trophy properties, and he's got his eyes on other things. But one of the things he's dealing with every single day, frankly, is I think these different banks calling him for some of his properties that are going through struggles. And not that I know anything, a 25 basis point cut ain't going to be enough to right the ship for him for a lot of the stuff that he's going through.
200.
You
He
think
won't
so?
see him. He won't see a difference until there's 200 basis points delta from today.
Is that for a lot of the real estate companies? Is that where we need to be? Is like get to 100 basis points or 200 basis points, and then we can all breathe easier? I mean, or no?
It's another nuanced and micro conversation. I don't know what Dini does, but it sounds like he's in life science, data centers. Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about whether it's going to be 100, 200. I don't think you're waking up caring, frankly. Logistics, same thing. Cold storage, lineage logistics is crushing it. Office, again, it is it's a micro conversation about subcategory asset class, and then overlaid by region.
Yeah.
I want to second what CJ said. He's right. It depends on region. It depends on the asset class. And even inside that same region and same asset class, there may be some winners and some losers. A great example is like a Blackstone who could be buying and selling in Dallas in the same sectors or whatever. I think a lot of it plays back, especially from the publicly traded REIT side of things, balance sheet strength, debt to equity ratios, all that fun stuff, credit ratings. Obviously, the stronger your credit rating, the stronger your cost to borrow, the ability to borrow at the more attractive rate. And again, a 25 basis point cut for some of these guys that are, triple B plus or, let's say not junk, higher investment grade. Their cost is really going to improve that much dramatically versus what we're seeing today. If anybody wants to go out and borrow right now, everything starts with a 5 handle. I mean, that's just the way of the world that is we're operating in. And after next week, it's still going to be, I think, with a 5 handle or a very high 4 number. But to get that high 4 number, again, you're going to have to be the best of the best type of companies. And RXR, for some of the assets that they own, or for the majority of the assets, they're not in that position. I mean, again, it's just nothing against Scott. I think he's a great guy. I think that what he's got going, he's dealing with a lot more pains and struggles than a lot of the other publicly traded guys are going through.
Interesting. Yeah. What is I don't even know, so you'll have to school me on RXR. What is their do they own all different types of asset classes, or do they just own a certain one?
If I recall, it's predominantly office.
Okay.
I think he does have some life science stuff. I mean, I could probably pull up the website and see the portfolio, but he's been known for mostly office. And again, from what I've seen, it's A minus, B plus, B-ish type stuff in some desirable but some not so desirable markets as well. Again, it's mostly obviously New York City or New York metro region focus. So I think that's the key. You don't see him up and planting his flag in Dallas, Texas and owning 50 properties here necessarily. He might have some one-offs.
Okay. All right. And then that might maybe just that's why he's saying what he's saying. I mean, I guess there needs to be just generally, I think there needs to be a shift in real estate expectations as far as valuations go anyway, and the ability. But, this is.
Well, there is.
Yeah.
There is, Amy. I mean, real estate's definitely more in favor than it was a year ago, let alone 2 years ago. So, I mean, the sector is back. The sentiment is turning, especially with these chatters of the Fed cutting interest rates. And if REITs and real estate is so interest rate sensitive, then any adjustments bode well for the sector. So I think that tide is starting to turn. But this goes back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, when you've got all of these different firms coming out, Cohen and Steers, Prudential, Morgan Stanley, the list goes on of managers saying, we've hit the bottom, things are turning, things are better. Nobody can officially call the bottom, but when you have 5 guys, 6 guys out there saying, hey, start positioning your portfolios because we've hit bottom, again, have we hit bottom officially? Or that's what I'm saying. Like, what's different today versus a year ago is that real estate is back in favor.
Okay. Well, yeah. That, I mean, you see, yeah. So there's that. You just took my thunder. But yeah, the next article was the U.S. head of U.S. equity at PGIM was basically saying we're coming back. We're starting to invest again. But is it just
Rick,
the big?
are you talking about Rick Romano?
Yeah. Yeah.
Rick's a good friend. I know Rick very well. He's a big wig in our industry, and him, like I said, Cohen and Steers, their head guy. Morgan Stanley's big PM was on CNBC last week, and she put out their commentary this week. All of these big fund managers are putting out their August, September investor publications highlighting this.
Mm-hmm.
Tide's turning, Fed's cutting interest rates. Here's the sectors that we're invested in. Here's why you need to be positioned. And Rick is, like I said, one of the big cheerleaders of our industry. So I'm not surprised to see him out in the print doing that stuff.
Very cool. So do you think they buy office first? Is that where people go? They because that's where you get the deepest discount. So people are just bargain shopping.
That's a great question. And I think the answer is it depends. It's going to depend on the investor, the end client. I don't think the Edward Jones or the Ameriprise advisor is calling up John Q. Public or Grandma and Grandpa saying, hey, the Fed's cut interest rates. It's time to buy SL Green. Because they don't know what the hell SL Green is in the first place. So I think that's, if it's a risk tolerant, somebody that doesn't mind playing that game. Yeah. Especially, looking at our fund. I mean, office is one of our overweight, I wouldn't say overweight, but one of our, exposed sectors that we're playing because of that yield opportunity. So yes, I think you are going to see folks that are out there, but in the same breath, look, all I care about is income. Remember, I'm focused on the REIT side of the equation. So for us, it's who's raising their dividends while cutting their leverage, who pays the highest dividends with the lowest leverage ratios. And so for me, I want to make sure that these guys are able to take down debt in the market, which we've seen 20 companies do it in the past couple of weeks. And we've had 5 already this week in 2 days take down debt deals. What's the cost to borrow? How does this push their leverage? That type of stuff. But I think, again, at the end of the day, what's tried and true? Cell towers, data centers, industrial, these are the sectors that I think are going to continue to see the inflows with the headlines of the Fed cutting interest rates. It's time to buy REITs. Mm-hmm. For those that are taking a little bit more risk on, they might look at some retail, some storage, apartments, et cetera. Apartments are just a very unique sector of its own inside the whole world of REITs because of the fact of what we're seeing on the housing side of the equation. If the Fed cuts 25 basis points next week, what's going to happen to the 30-year mortgage? It's not going to drop 100 basis points, 200 basis points on the news. So mortgage rates are still escalated, which, again, bodes well for the multifamily REITs and the single-family rental players. We had Invitation Homes that came out with their update yesterday. There's a big REIT conference this week, and so all these guys are putting out updates. And Invitation Homes is talking about how their home buying acquisitions over the past month, and it's kind of exceeding their forecast. So, this puck is going to continue to go towards the rental guys until we see a reset in the housing market. So, the long way of saying it, Amy, is that office is going to see its fair share of investors. But I think the tried and true asset classes, again, the cell towers, the industrials, et cetera, are going to continue to see, a bulk of demand. One more note to add there. Bloomberg has this little automated feature that they publish regularly, like X fund flow came in this week. And the only reason why I mentioned that is one caught my eye this morning. And it was on, the ticker is SCHH. It's Schwab's REIT ETF. Investors added $170 million in the fund yesterday. The total asset is at $7.5 billion. It's the biggest one-day increase in at least a year. And they said that they've gotten about $538 million over the past year.
Wow.
So with so much money, again, position. And by the way, SCHH owns the largest market cap names, and we can go through a whole conversation about that. But that's basically, again, the tried and true, the S&P 500, the largest market cap names is what's attracting the AUM inflows.
Interesting. Very, very cool. Yeah. Well, good. It's going to be nice when it comes back. It'll be fun again. Real estate will be fun again. It'll be awesome. Real estate again.
2 weeks from today. I look forward to 2 weeks from today, our call, because next week it's going to be, oh my God, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? It's the following week.
Exactly. And everybody's like, oh, yay, what's happening? No, I feel you for sure. The next topic, we had a conversation. I'm in some groups where an international group where it's a bunch of prop tech associations, and the subject that a lot of people were talking about post the Prop Tech Connect conference was cybersecurity in buildings. And I'm wondering, based off of this group, Deanie, I'm sure y'all face this a lot, but because your hospitals have to be protected, but it's becoming more of a hot topic now as understanding how to mitigate network crashes and the ransomware. And because as more and more IoT devices become prevalent, this whole cybersecurity issue there's more startups in it starting to come about. And so I just was interested to kind of hear how this is impacting kind of real estate investing now. Are you seeing any movement there?
Well, from an outpatient medical standpoint, it's for the last 2 years, it's been front and center on our due diligence when we look at assets as to what are all the systems and what are they connected to that is has no potential security, so that we can't have anyone come through an HVAC system or some temperature control system or something and get into our system, which then potentially impacts our organization. And the same is true for hospitals. I mean, they're worried that something can get into their systems from outpatient medical. So we go through a lot of cybersecurity to prevent that and to block that. And we have turned down assets where we cannot get comfortable with the systems that are in the various mechanical properties of the building. We're not going to take the risk.
Interesting. So so when you're doing your due diligence, it's I'm assuming you just have outside cyber security contractors, and you have to, is it constantly as an operational thing? It's something that you have to
Right.
all the
Right.
time. Yeah.
Right. And they have to show us how they are secure, what systems they use, what type of platforms they're using to prove that they are secure. And then our IT people test all of that to be sure. You just can't take a chance anymore. It's too easy to get into systems by way of other devices and systems that can be in a building.
Yeah. I wonder if that translates to other industries. Paul, are you seeing anything is there a bigger concern cybersecurity wise in the UK?
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, we had a breach in the NHS, and, it led to people dying. It led to, blood results not coming back for, instead of hours, a week, 2 weeks. Well, if you're seriously ill, that's a big issue. And I know in Ireland, the same thing happened there. The whole system for the Irish Health Board was down for, I think it was months on end, absolutely months on end. And certainly in health tech, I agree with you. They have to get to the stage, and sadly, this all costs a huge amount of money. It's the whole, the pull on the property sector never seems to end. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. The issues we see with the banks are very robust, and that's the same way the health sector has to go in terms of the robustness of how they're doing. But the property sector has to start looking at what happens when someone gets into my lift systems or my lighting systems or my HVAC, as Denny said. You can really just totally destroy a building very, very quickly. If you get someone who can work out how to trigger off automated fire systems when the sprinklers go off, I'm just being exaggerating here, but just so much can go wrong. And I think they've never, hackers have always been after the big fish, the banks, etc. But now they're realizing they can go into a health system and hold it to ransom. We've seen it across a lot of sectors, and that's something which is sadly for the property sector another big costs, which you're going to have to start taking on the chin very shortly if they're
Yeah.
not doing it over there.
Yeah, so it's going to translate over into the office sector and the industrial sector and the data centers. All of these. It's kind of interesting. Back in the day when I was a real estate owner, is that the cybersecurity? I didn't even think about it. Like I just like we had our office and we had our files and just did not even think about. I ran multifamily. I had hundreds of units. We had everybody's social security numbers and files in a file cabinet in the back of the office. Can you imagine if someone just broke in there and got all it? But in 2017, I wouldn't think about it. Like it was just not a thing. And 2015 and all that other stuff. But now it's becoming quite an issue for sure, as everything becomes more digitized and things like that. But I think that the IoT that's the concern, right? More and more buildings are going to have IoT devices. Then they're going to have, they're all going to be connected over a Wi-Fi system. And how do you protect that? And is it digital infrastructure that protects it? But is this another cost that people are taking? I know in the medical sector, of course, they're taking it seriously, but I don't know if other real estate classes are yet. Maybe
some are. Certainly some of my clients are taking it very seriously. We don't. They're taking it incredibly seriously, and the amount of work and resources we've had to put into our company just to satisfy the levels of cybersecurity needs is huge. It's a big bottom line hit on us. But there's some people taking it very seriously, and others really are not looking at this in the detail they need to yet.
Yeah, very cool. So that leads into another topic, and this I'd like to know on as far as the climate and everybody. There's this big push in investing in the climate and ESG investing and that kind of thing. And as we entered into this inflationary environment, I'm wondering if that's kind of thawed a little bit. Like people, you have to keep the lights on and you have to keep the bare bones minimum stuff. So has the ESG investing or the sustainability or even climate investing decreased because people are just getting squeezed? I'm curious.
I don't think so. I think, the problem is we hear these silly headlines that it's going to cost 9 trillion to decarbonize. As I say regularly on speakers as I give, you can go into a building right now and you can cut its energy by 20 up to maybe 30% really very, very easily and make a profit. So if you're a real estate owner, you can drop your energy bills by 20 to 30% and it's going to save you money. There's lots of ways of skinning the cats. I'm still dumbfounded that here we are in 2024, and I think the majority of buildings we see still have fluorescent type lighting, which uses, multiples more energy than than an efficient LED lighting building would. And again, you can lease these bulbs out over 5 years. You don't even have to buy them. The way the mechanics of this have worked is that you switch over and you save money today. And I sort of sit here banging my head against the wall thinking, who are these FDs in these buildings who are not realizing we've got to do this? And as a one plant last Tuesday, and again they had their roof is the size of football pitches and no thought of even moving to solar yet. And you sort of think, well, your energy costs are through the roof. They're actually based in an area of London that has got huge issues with the grid. The grid is literally almost falling over in West London because they built so many data centers that the grid can't keep is creaking, and that's putting it very mildly. And yet you have these huge industrial estates with acres and acres and acres of flat roofs, and you think, really? Put two and two together here, you could be doing very well for yourself. And the issue we have here is the Russia-Ukraine war. Energy prices are just still sky high. It turns out there was actually Ukrainians who blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, not the Russians, after all. And that caused so much disruption in Germany, I can't tell you. And we're sitting here with 300-400% higher energy price than we were in 2019. And it's not good. And I don't see it changing quick enough. And really the reason why things are not changing quick enough, the energy sector, is that we can't even get the renewables onto the grid. And this is where there's some real lack of thought process going on. I think the average age of an electrical engineer in the UK is 56. As Denny will tell you, when we're nearing 56 now, me and Denny, you don't want to be working overtime on weekends. Those days are gone. And this is the issue here: is that we have a real big, we're in a position now where we start moving much more to renewables, but we can't get the stuff onto the grid, and that's one of the big fundamental issues I'm seeing on the coalface anyway. But as I say, you can go to ESG, you can start doing stuff rapidly that will save you money. And then my whole view is, if you're saving X, then start investing out in some of the ESG stuff, which isn't giving you a great return, but is doing the right thing morally. I mean, we've got to get there morally. It's just,
I feel you.
This is just one world, and sadly, we're all interconnected. And the more you pollute in one country, the more somebody in some other country is getting a real bad, pack of cards hands them. So,
is that an Irish saying? I'm just curious. Is that, or is that?
I know I got that one wrong. Okay, so just forgive me. We'll edit it later. Hand of cards. You got played a bad hand of cards. Is what I meant to say. Not
bad
a pack of cards.
hand of cards. Yeah, I don't know what you said, but yeah, it was close. It was close.
I got away with it nearly until you pulled me up on Amy. So
I know. I got to call you out every once in a while, Paul. I got to keep you humble. That's how we do it over here in the U.S. Just kidding. All right. Well, this is the end of our hour. Look at that. It's gone by. So we'll do outros. I'm so glad to CJ Fellini for coming in, and then also David Auerbach. We always have fun time with CJ and David. So that's awesome. Deanie, why don't you do your outro and any parting thoughts for this week?
Well, just to finish up on what Paul said, sustainability will happen in the U.S. as the laws and regulations require it.
Eventually. Saying that, Ali Dean, I'm going to jump in. I'm sorry, but I did notice that the Fed is putting something like 221 million into putting more EVs across America, EV charging points, which is great. Thank God. So yes, eventually, Dean, you will join the rest of the world and become more sustainable.
Yeah. And New York City's jumping on and putting 5,000 in because of that funding. But that's what it's going to require. It's going to require the U.S. government to subsidize it, because it doesn't make sense. I mean, it doesn't pencil. If it penciled, there'd be some entrepreneur out there, putting them all over the place. But it doesn't. Right now, it doesn't make sense. There's not enough. But it's one over the other. It's like you have an infrastructure problem for electric cars because we don't have enough EV charging stations. You can't take one from New York and drive across to LA and make it, right? I mean, you're going to have to go through Nebraska, and there's no EV charging stations in Nebraska. Well, there might be. I'm lying, but you get the point.
But listen, we were having this conversation when they first had the Model 4T, wouldn't we?
Yeah. No, I know.
There's no difference.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. That leads me to another funny story. So there was this article when Henry Ford created the Model T, and there was an advertisement going, "Why would you ever go away from horses? Like, I don't understand this contraption." And there was all this advertisement. It gets naysaying a car. We're human beings. We don't like change, man. We just don't like change.
Change. Come on. We can do it.
All right, Deanie. Now keep going. Talk about it.
No, that's it. I mean, for hospitals and other medical facilities, sustainability is important, and we all talk about it, but the actual execution is going to come when regulations and laws require it. And that's typically when you'll see government funding come behind it also. Until that happens, it's the volunteer side of this doesn't work.
Yeah, I feel you.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., yeah, for sure.
In the US.
Well, not right now. Not when we're getting squeezed.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
And look, it's inconvenient. I mean, Denny and Emmy, it's inconvenient. I got an EV and it's inconvenient. But you know what? It's the big C. We'll all die if we don't become more used to it, a little more inconvenience.
Yes.
Convenience is killing us. It costs a lot of energy to be convenient.
I'm going to get you a little cheerleader outfit with pom-poms. It says climate, and then you're going to be the climate cheerleader. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, this has been fun, y'all. I got to get Paul Hill on a regular basis. So thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you. This the Commercial
Thank
Real
you.
Estate Morning News Show, and we, the U.S. PropTech Council is, bye, Paul. We'll see you. The U.S.
Take care.
PropTech Council, yeah, for sure. The U.S. PropTech Council is sponsored by Lerner and Associates. Lerner and Associates, Ben Lerner is a great person and a great sponsor of the U.S. PropTech Council. We are, the U.S. PropTech Council is the trade association for the real estate technology industry in the U.S. And we host this morning show every week on Tuesdays. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.